everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Liv Wu on the Global Food team. I just spent a very enjoyable hour having lunch with Patti, who I'm delighted to have here, talking about all sorts of things, and in particular about this beautiful book, her cookbook. But she has a breadth of knowledge. She is a political scientist and interested in furthering democracy and immigration issues. But I think the force and the pull of her family finally brought her back to food. There are 3 other people, her sisters, who are also in food. And it's what she's come back to with this wonderful background that she has. And I think probably the one thing I'll tell you from our luncheon conversation that was so striking is that she's just real. Just like all these recipes that'll work for you, she's raising 3 boys. And I raised 1 boy, and that was enough for me. But anyway, and she knows what they like to eat and how to cook for them and how to take them out to eat. And so this cookbook is totally accessible, and largely because of the force of her personality and her family. So I'm just going to give her the floor. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You have no idea how I've been looking forward to this day because I use Google 1,000 times a day. So, so nice to be here inside Google with all of you. Such an incredible team and incredible people. And I just had the most fabulous lunch. I kept saying, get out, really, get out, really. They gave me a tour of the kitchen and they're making their own Mexican-style chorizo. I would have stayed there, but I had to come talk to you, which I'm delighted about. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and then afterwards, please, if you have any questions, let me know. I wanted to begin by telling you a little bit of the roots of this book and where the contents come from. And I'll start with something that happened to me when, after I moved from Mexico, I got married, moved to Dallas, Texas, and I was gonna be there just for a couple of years with my husband. And then we decided to stay longer, and I got pregnant and had my firstborn. And when my mother realized that I was not gonna come back to Mexico soon, or maybe, for a few more years or more, she got really sad because she was really missing me. And she told me something, as we sometimes do. We tell things to our kids that we regret and they're a little bit hurtful. And she said, trying to make me feel guilty and wanting me to come back to Mexico, she said, you know what you've become? And I said, what? And she said, a despatriada, which is, it makes my skin, as we say in Mexico, have piel de gallina, con los pelos de gallina, like the hairs go up. Despatriada is a really strong word, let me tell you. Despatriada means that you have no roots, that you've lost your patria, your country, that you're sort of floating around. And that was very hard to swallow. And then, of course, thought, she misses me terribly. And it take many years for me to understand that she said that because she missed me. And that I have really strong roots to my home country. And I have really strong roots to my new home country, which I also love. So I am happily torn between the US and Mexico. And what happened, and this is what brought me into cooking, I studied political science. I wanted to be an academic. I grew up being an idealist, and my parents were even concerned I struck conversation with just about anyone who would share a little bit of their story. And when I moved to Texas, after having studied political science and wanted to be an academic and work in a think tank, I became insanely nostalgic about Mexico. I was newlywed. My husband was traveling all over, working a lot. I was writing my dissertation on Mexican democracy, which took many, many years. And I was insanely nostalgic, and I started cooking. I've always been a big eater, but I had never been a cook. I was a terrible cook. I just think about the things I put my husband through. He ate some crazy meals, let me tell you. But so I started to cook, and then I started hunting down Mexican ingredients. And it was that distance from my home country that made me perceive its food dimension and all of the ingredients under a new light, and seeing how exotic and beautiful and gorgeous and sophisticated it is. I grew up with tomatillos and avocados and chilies every day. Now, when I found them, in the Latino aisle of a store or in a little Asian store, I would go like, oh my God, the tomatillo and the chili, and I would romanticize about it and started making all the foods that I grew up eating, which made me feel at home. It made me feel nurtured. It made me feel warm and cozy. Started making all that. And but I kept on studying political science because, as my father would say, of course I flirted with food so many times before I decided to take the plunge. My father would say, Patty, we put you through college and now you're gonna go wash dishes. So I kept on studying, kept on working, and then we moved to Washington, D.C., further studied and worked at a think tank, which I really admire, the Inter-American Dialogue, which does fabulous work with the relations between U.S. and Mexico. And I was still crazy about the food, and my husband kept on poking fun of me, and he would quiz me. Okay, Patty, you're a political analyst. Who's the president of France? Because all I read was the food section and cookbooks, and I would be cooking all the time, and I would be really unhappy at work, thinking I just need to put a little more effort and get involved in more projects. And the thing that really was pulling me was food. So after thinking a lot about it and struggling, because I think we all have expectations of ourselves, and the people that surround us have expectations of ourselves. And I saw myself as an academic with glasses writing articles that would help with a small grain of salt or sand, as we say in Mexico, con un poquito de arena, un granito de arena, to contribute to the strengthening of democratic institutions, etc., etc. And I decided to take the plunge and resign, and I enlisted to an intensive course at La Académie de Cuisine, which is a cooking school in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I had done it once before when I had been on maternity leave with my second son, and I decided to do it again to test the waters and see if I really wanted to do it. And oh boy, did I really want to do it. I went crazy, and since then, I haven't looked back, and I've never worked as hard in my life. It's funny because people say you should do what you love and be passionate about what you love, and it really takes over. And it's really taken over, and I sometimes have to stop. My husband's like, Patty, it's Sunday, So in this book, you will find those two roots. I try to show Mexican home cooking and recipes and ingredients that may be already very familiar to Americans from both routes. The traditional foods and dishes that I grew up eating and that I love and that I miss, and many that I've gotten through requests from the blog or my classes or the PBS show. And I feel that by doing that, I help find those links that sometimes are missing from that chain that connects communities and families, to continue passing them on. But you will also find recipes and dishes and stories of me testing those ingredients and those dishes in my American kitchen, sort of testing the limits, expanding the uses of those ingredients. And I try to do it in a genuine way, respecting the soul of the ingredient and the dish or whatever I may be playing with. But sort of helping, again, with my small grain of sand, as we say, to continue to expand Mexican cooking, as many cooks and chefs are doing around the world. So you will find that, the traditional and sort of the innovative. And then as far as the stories, I try to share not only, how to make a certain dish or how to use a certain ingredient, but I think that Mexico and the United States, we think we know each other, and we have that huge border between each other that connects us. But I think there's so many things that we're missing out. And let me tell you, I've been the very first one to be humbled. When I moved to the US, I always thought, oh, Mexico, we have the centuries of history and infusions of other countries and ingredients and so much richness. And the US is such a young country when you compare it to the pre-Hispanic Mexico. I used to think that food and the culinary world in the US was going to be much more shallow than it is, and that there weren't going to be, the 32 regional cuisines of Mexico, and I really think there's dozens and dozens more. I've been humbled time and again. I mean, after I went to Memphis, I couldn't believe the food, the culture, the specialties. Everywhere I go, I've become really, again, humbled about how little I knew of my new country, and now I'm super curious. I'm dying to go to Nashville for one thing, New Orleans for another. I want to come to San Francisco for more than one day. I realize as a Mexican how little I know of the US. And I think it goes the other way around. People think they know Mexican food. And I think, the US and the world really doesn't. It's the few dishes that have crossed the border and have become like crazily popular that everybody knows. But not many people know that in Mexico, we're crazy about salads, for example. But we just don't call it such. We were talking before about how in Mexico, I think we haven't done such stark or marked categorizations or compartmentalizations, the words vegetarian and vegan. I was talking to my editor when we were writing the book. I was really lucky I have this fabulous editor who helped me sort of give direction to the book. And she was saying, Patti, let's do a chapter on vegetarian food. And I jumped up. I'm like, no, vegetarian, what do you mean? No, I eat chorizo, I eat bacon, chilorio, huevos con chorizo. No, there's no way I'm going to do a vegetarian chapter. And then I realized all the foods that I eat that are vegetarian or vegan, naturally. The Mexican diet was mainly a vegetarian diet before the Spanish arrived and brought the pork and the lard, which we of course love, and so many other ingredients, but we just don't call them that. So the example about salads. We eat, for example, cactus paddle salad. Let me tell you about an ingredient that's going to go wild. Remember how portobello mushrooms were all the rage for vegetarians? Just wait until cactus paddles start being sold clean, because the hassle is to get rid of the spinas, of the little thorns. They're very persnickety and hard to clean. But cactus paddles, oh my God, they're wholesome, nutritious, they're tart, they're chewy, they're meaty, they're incredibly delicious. You can use them in 1,000 different ways. And just like that cactus paddles, there's so many ingredients that people may find in the supermarkets, but they don't know how to use them or what to use them for. Jicamas, chayote squash, all different kinds of tomatoes, and the tomatillo. Everybody knows the salsa verde and has tried a salsa verde, but not many people know that all you need is a pound of those, tomatillos that come covered in that husk, and people are a little intimidated, but you just peel them, boil them, drop a chile, drop an onion, throw it in a blender, you have salsa verde. So I think I'm trying to build a bridge in whichever way I can to say, hey, you already have all these things here. They can give you so much power in your own kitchen. It's about empowering, those connections and those things that we now share, thankfully, because you can find any ingredient that you want that's used in Mexican cooking, either not in your corner store with a click of an online button. So I try to share, you're going to bring the tomatillos into your house. Let me tell you how you find them, where they come, how they've been used throughout history. And I don't want to bog people down with so much history, but hey, you can make salsa verde. You can make a salad using it fresh. You can make a jam. And I'll give you an example of how distance has been a blessing and a curse. So I miss my family terribly. I do, horribly. My kids, I have 3 boys. They have so many cousins in Mexico who they love seeing and playing with all the time. But wait, I wasn't going to talk about my boys. I was going to say the tomatillo, which I'm passionate about. It is just such a gorgeous fruit. In Mexico, tomatillos are mainly used to make a salsa verde, a cooked salsa verde. It's very rare to find the tomatillo used raw. There's a few salsas here and there, but not like raw, chopped in a salad. It's a very new thing. So when I was, coming up with more recipes for the book, like new spins on ingredients, one summer it was really hot. I had a really ripe, fresh, super juicy, sweet watermelon, and I was trying to come up with this salad, and I thought, oh my God, the perfect thing would be the tomatillos. They're hard, they're tart, uniquely tart, because you can find nothing to match that flavor of the tomatillo. Not green tomatoes, guys. It's a different thing. In a pinch, you can substitute, but tomatillo is a tomatillo. So I thought that's a great contrast, and I came up with a vinaigrette, jalapeno, and mint, and some feta cheese in there. So I was telling my mom all about this salad one day, and she's like, Pati, raw tomatillo, yuck. No, we use it cooked. It's in salsas. And I'm like, Ma, you won't believe the salad. No way. There's no way. She comes visit. What do I give her? The watermelon and tomatillo salad. Who's making it in her house in Mexico City? My mom. So it's that distance that has given me at the same time the nostalgia and that really, really heavy nostalgia, which can be beautiful when it's so heavy sometimes. But the freedom to play and to test, those ingredients and those dishes. I've been talking too long. Should I take some questions?
Hello.
Hi.
I've got 4 younger children.
Yes.
They're aged from 10 down to 4.
4.
So 10, 8, 6, 4 years old. What recipes do your boys like to make with you? Or what's a good one for the children?
Let me tell you, Mexican food is perfect for kids. Perfect. Because it's accommodating, it's versatile, it's easy, and the kids can participate. I'll tell you something funny, and then I'll tell you what you can feed your kids. I always like to compare the food of a place to its people. So the French. Think about French food. It's a little bit fussy. It's a little bit like things have to... I love French. I would go to Paris tomorrow. I love French food. But they're a little fussy. It's everything has to be perfect. And think about what they do to tomatoes. When they're going to use a tomato and it's going to be cooked, they boil it for just enough minutes. Then they take it out. Then they peel it. Then they core it. Then they seed it. Then they cut it in perfect little squares. What do Mexicans do with tomatoes for a sauce? We boil it, and we throw the entire thing in the blender. With the seeds, with the skin, with the core. I love the tart flavor of seeds, so as many Mexicans. So I think just to tell you how easy this book is going to be for you. You're not going to have to peel and core and seed and dice in perfect little squares. My kids love chicken tinga. They love chicken tinga. It's something you can pull together in half an hour. You can make it with chicken that you cook at home or with rotisserie chicken. You make a big batch, and one day you serve it with rice. A couple days later, Wednesday comes, what do we have for dinner, kids? Tingadillas, quesadillas with chicken tinga, which is incredible. You have a little bit left over. Friday, you can make some tortas or some sandwiches. The great thing is that many of the food here, another one is chilorio. Chilorio is like a similar take on the tinga in that it's shredded meat, this time pork, but you can make it with chicken too. It's a sauced up, sort of drier, moist stew that is super versatile and accommodating like us Mexicans. You can eat it on top of rice, you can eat it in quesadillas, in tortas, in molletes, and so those things you can make ahead, you can make them on a Sunday and then eat them. My kids love making the piggy cookies that are in here.
Okay. Well, my kids love chicken, so I know
they love chicken.
I notice how much of the cooking is between the men and the women in Mexico.
That's a good question. We're getting political. I used to do political analysis. There's a reason why I got out of political analysis, though. Most of the cooking is done by women, I think, in Mexico. It's a sort of a new thing. And if you think about the leading people in the culinary world professionally in Mexico, it used to be mostly women, the grand dames of Mexican cooking. You know, Diana Kennedy to begin with. She's British, but she rules.
Okay.
Like a British woman should do. Patricia Quintana, Monica Pati. I mean, there are so many. There was like a cadre of women who ruled the culinary world. And it's been, I think, the past generation, like this generation, the past 15 years, that men have entered and really broken the perception that it should only be women, and they're doing crazy fun things, testing and playing with the ingredients and the concepts. But it has been mainly women, and in the homes, it's also mainly women. I can tell you, in my house, it's mainly a women thing. When I got married, and I met my husband, I asked him on our first date, so do you like to cook? And he said, of course. And I said, so what do you cook? And he said, soup, chicken, salad. I've never seen a soup. I've never seen a chicken. I've never seen a salad. I've never seen the pouring of cereal into a bowl. But I love him so, and he will eat everything that I give him. I can keep on talking. Yes, I'll tell you more stories about what my boys like to eat. Anything that's sweet. My little one is wild about chipotles in adobo. You guys familiar with chipotles in adobo? Yes. No. Yes? Oh my God. Okay, you have to try that. And you buy it in the store. It comes in a can. You can make them by yourself too. See, this is a great thing about Mexican cooking. And why I think, many people think about Mexican cooking and it's either they think it's very spicy, which is not. First of all, not all of the dishes or recipes or food are spicy, or not all of the chilies are spicy. There's like 100 different kinds of fresh and dried chilies, and I would say like maybe 80% are super mild. Chiles, think about the poblano chile. Who knows a poblano chile? Yeah? Yeah? I love poblanos. I'm infatuated with them. They're so gorgeous. They're green, they're plump, they're curvy, they're meaty, they're delicious, they're shiny, they're incredible. And you can find them in the US, which you couldn't when I first moved to Dallas. They're vegetables. I mean, they're a gigantic chile, and I think people are intimidated because of the word chile. But I like to refer to poblano chilies as vegetables with a load full of personality. You can use them, you stuff them with cheese, with meat. You can make rajas with them for eggs, for so many things. So there, we dealt with the first myth of Mexican cooking, that it's always spicy. It's not. The second myth about Mexican cooking, I think, is that it's very laborious. So we do have phenomenal dishes like the mole poblano, or that laborious sauce to make, or the chiles en nogada, which are such an artistic creation. Who's heard about the chiles en nogada? Okay, it's poblano chilies that are charred and sorted and cleaned and stuffed with meat that's cooked in a mix of tomatoes and onion and garlic. And I know you guys had lunch. I hope I'm not gonna make you hungry again. The meat is cooked with tomatoes and onion and garlic and olives and capers and raisins and dried and fresh fruit. Talk about the combination of cultures with Spanish. Okay, so those chiles are stuffed, and then they're bathed with this walnut creamy sauce. And that's not all. Then they're garnished with pomegranate seeds. They're to die for. They're incredible. They're Baroque, and they're from a time in Mexico's history that was very Baroque. Those dishes are like on one end of the spectrum. We eat them for holidays, for weddings, for Independence Day. You eat them at certain times or on certain occasions. But most of the cooking in Mexico is home cooking, and it's super simple and easy to make. You have the tons of soups and pastas and rice dishes and salads and vegetable sides that are very easy. So they haven't become very popular. What I'm trying to do, just because those things stand out. So that's one myth. Then that's the other myth. Another myth, and I'll stop at the third, but I can just go on, is that Mexican food is like Tex-Mex food, or very greasy, cheesy, creamy. I love Tex-Mex food. I'll lick the plate of a combo platter. And I recognize what it is. It's a kind of regional food from the US, and there's wonderful things about it, but it's not Mexican food. You know, there's so many different layers and things inside of Mexican cooking, which is what I'm trying to do in here. Oh, wait! I had started talking about the chipotles in adobo sauce, and I never got to that. Wait, can I tell you about the chipotle sauce? The chipotles in adobo sauce? Okay. So my youngest son is crazy about chipotles in adobo sauce. They come in cans, and what they are, you all need to go and get some. What they are, it's jalapeno. So everybody knows a jalapeno, right? A chipotle, which is a beautiful name, I think, chipotle, is a jalapeno that has been picked when it's at its ripest. So not green, but red. And then it's dried. And then it's smoked. So can you imagine of all that flavor is super concentrated, okay? And smoky, super smoky and rustic. And think of a chile in cowboy land. You have the chipotle. Then that chile is pickled in an adobo sauce. The adobo sauce has vinegar and spices and tomatoes, and I found out ancho chiles too. So think about it. Chile is being pickled in another chile. How crazy is that? Spectacular. Because the chipotle, it's smoky and it's super spicy, and the ancho chile that it's pickled in is chocolatey and it's bittersweet and it has a taste of prunes. Okay, so you have this condiment that's incredible, and you already buy it in a can, right? And you can use that for so many things. So that's one ingredient that you are going to have to get to make the chicken tinga, because it's in the chicken tinga recipe. But you can get it online with the click of a button. You can get it at the grocery store. And I'll tell you something. You can make your own. And you know how I found out? Because of a request that I got from a woman from Australia. So having this blog and this site has really been an enriching, incredible experience for me, because first I started getting requests from nostalgic Mexicans like me. You know, I started teaching classes, and then I started to get requests on people wanted to see photos of the how-tos and stories behind the recipe. So I started the blog to show and share more recipes and more stories. And then I didn't know it then, but you guys know how the online world is a crazy thing, and it just goes everywhere and explodes. And I started getting requests first from Mexicans that were nostalgic like me and wanted, you know, the cookie that my grandmother used to make from Zacatecas, and, you know, she died many years ago, and I want to make it now for my kids. So that's what I talk about when I talk about the links that are missing in the chains. But then I started getting other requests from other people that weren't even Mexican. I got this email from a woman in Australia, okay? She grows her own chilies, and then she pickles them and she makes salsas and she sells them. And she said, great about your site. Now, can you help me? I want to make chipotles in adobo sauce. I can't find them here, and people really love them, and I want to make them and sell them. Can you help me source a recipe? And I thought, who on earth would want to make the chipotles in adobo sauce? It's like trying to make your own ketchup. Like, you wouldn't do that on the Sunday night, right? Like, you go to a fancy restaurant that has its own homemade ketchup, but it's not something that every people wants to do. So I thought, you know, you can buy them online, and it's not something that people really make. She was really insistent, and she said, no, but I really want to make them on my own. Can you please help me research? And this is something I love doing. Like, when somebody sends me a request, it's like they send me on a mission. So I started researching in all my cookbooks, and as all my family now knows that I am obsessed with cookbooks and cooking manuals and anything that has a recipe on it. Whenever they come visit, they bring me cookbooks from all over Mexico. The last one my dad brought was a book from Colima, which is a state in Mexico that is really not well known, about how to cook iguana in 200 ways. So that's I don't cook iguana, but been a really fascinating read, let me tell you. But so I come through all my cookbooks, couldn't find a recipe for chipotle and adobo sauce. So when I went to Mexico, I would try to find out because people pickle chipotles in vinegar. But guys, that's a different thing. That's a different recipe, okay? So I told her I found recipes for chipotles pickled in vinegar, but not in adobo. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna stop trying to find it somewhere. I'm gonna try and play with it in my kitchen. 4 frustrated years later. It wasn't that I was, all the time playing with those chipotles in adobo sauce, but every couple months I would try a new tweak on the recipe here and there until I nailed it. And that's when I realized that what my recipe had been missing for all of those tries, a little more vinegar, a little bit less vinegar, aside from a little bit of dark brown sugar, it was the ancho chilies. Who would have thought that a chile would love to be pickled in another chile? So that's for just one ingredient. And you guys, you don't even have to make that. You can buy it in cans. So here's why I think that, Mexico and the US and Mexico and the rest of the world, because I think everybody knows a taco, right? Everybody knows or think they know Mexican food. So here I'm sort of inviting people into, hey, look a little closer. We're very similar. We have pastas, we have rices, we have soups and salads, and they're going to give you lots of options on things to make at home.
I wanted to ask you a question about for food enthusiasts who actually want to touch and feel the food and connect with the ingredients and stuff. Are there culinary tours? Are there workshops and other things that we could get access to? Because I feel if you do that, you love food at a very different level versus just picking up this recipe,
Yes.
going to a supermarket, getting the ingredients and doing it. Are there resources that
Yes.
folks like me maybe others can use?
Absolutely. There is a ton. In fact, in Mexico, there are a lot of food tour companies and food tour guides, and it's really exploding. I can give you there's so many. I'll tell you something. Both, for the classes that I teach at the Mexican Cultural Institute and the recipes that I do, I really dig in deep. One of the classes that I did that I have enjoyed the most was a class on vanilla. Everybody thinks that vanilla comes from... Who said? Not Madagascar. Yes, everybody thinks that vanilla comes from Madagascar because they've been so good at producing it and marketing it. I've never been to Madagascar, but I know vanilla from Madagascar. Vanilla comes from Papantla, from a really exotic tropical place in the state of Veracruz in Mexico. That's where vanilla originated. And that's where it's the only place where the orchid of vanilla grew. And it's existed since Totonaca times, pre-Hispanic times. There's beautiful legends surrounding how did people come up with producing vanilla? You know that vanilla has to be picked green, and then it has to be sweated in wooden boxes for 28 days and then passed in the sun during the day. It's a really complex process. Whoever came up with it, it's not an easy thing. But I once taught a class because I tried to do, the myth and also show, hey, we're Mexico and vanilla comes from here. Well, now I'm here. As my kids tell me, when we get stopped and they say, where are you from? And I say, we're Mexican. My kids say, Ma, you're Mexican, we're American. But I taught a class about vanilla, and I developed a menu that had dishes starting from soup to dessert. No, it even had the drink. It was from the drink, salad, soup to dessert. And it was like a historic route of dishes that have existed using vanilla since Totonaca times to more modern colonial and, to today, really experimental spins. So it was like a historical tour, and also the different uses of vanilla. The vanilla bean, the seeds, if it's simmered. I have the recipe for a vinaigrette with the vanilla fried, and all of the different uses of vanilla bring out a different facet of the ingredient, right? Anyway, just like me, there's a lot of people that are, trying to showcase the cacao in Mexico and the vanilla and the coffee and the tequila. And I can give you a list of sources. I mean, it's really booming.
Hi, what do you
Hi.
think a cook that starts working with this book needs in his pantry? What are the basic ingredients you need to start cooking Mexican food?
That's a great question. Beans, either black or pinto, but you can cook them or you can buy I mean, I give people choices because I believe being in a kitchen is all about choices. Like, I don't believe that there should be only one way to do something. There's really shortcuts, and people can decide where they start, where they begin with. But beans, rice, avocado, for sure. Do you like avocado? Chipotles in adobo sauce. They're an utmost necessity. So when I don't make them on my own, I have cans in my pantry just in case of an emergency. Tomatoes. Most of the basic things in here are tomato, onion, garlic, and either jalapeno or chipotle in adobo sauce. Limes. Limes are really crucial. I was asked last week which is my favorite cooking tool, and I love my comal. My mom gave it to me, and I use it for making tortillas, toasting tortillas, charring ingredients. But you know what my favorite kitchen tool is? My lime squeezer. It's a powerful tool. I got it in a market in Mexico, and it's super heavy metal, and it'll squeeze the juice out of any lime. But it's just fresh ingredients like that. And if you want to try more of the recipes in here, ancho chilies, they're easy to find, dried ancho chilies. But yeah, I would say queso fresco or farmer's cheese. I was, last week, a food editor asked me, and she said, Patty, I got your book, and I love the photos, and the recipes look great, but did you and your editor have a discussion about having a resource section, where people can find things? And of course we had that discussion, but different from 50 or 40 or 30 years ago, when it was really hard to find Mexican ingredients and you had one or two brands that did the canned stuff. And the resource page in a Mexican cookbook was literally half a page. Call this weird 1-800 number or ask your aunt to smuggle some. These days, if I wanted to make a resource section to my cookbook, it would be bigger than the book, because by the time it would have been published, it would have been outdated. There's so many brands that carry different kinds of things, from the pickled jalapenos to the chipotles in adobo to the already cooked beans to the salsas to, so many things. There's so many brands that by the time it would have been printed, there would be new companies and people will be making many things at home. And then if I wanted to list the stores that sell Mexican products, I would spend the rest of my lifetime, and you can find things online. So what I do in the book, and I really worked very hard at it, is describing the ingredients and giving people the knowledge in very simple, fast ways of how to, you have all these options. How do you choose what you bring home? Or if you don't find something and you really don't want to source it, like piloncillo, to give you an example, it's a fabulous Mexican ingredient that I would try to find it if I were you, just because I like it so much. I put it in my coffee. Piloncillo is the purest form of cane sugar. So when cane is processed, it's like extra virgin olive oil, like the first press of cane sugar it's this liquid, this cane syrup that is put in cones. That's why it's called pilon or piloncillo. It's put in these cones and it dries. And it has a beautiful dark caramel color, and it's no preservatives, really not processed. It tastes like a little bit like molasses, like dark brown sugar, but with an extra layer of something rustic. It tastes a little bit like coffee, a little bit like nuts. It is so rich, I can't even describe it. There's some cookies in here and recipes that use it. You can sub it for dark brown sugar, but if you find the piloncillo now, it's easy to find. It goes by other names, and I tell you here which. You'll be just having in your pantry many more ingredients that not only will I give you here stories so you know how they came to be, what are the legends surrounding, because I really think that being in the kitchen is sort of magical. Like if you're cooking with a vanilla pod, you like history. If you're cooking with a vanilla pod and you know the legends and the history behind it in an entertaining way and you're using it, I think connecting with that ingredient is different. You're here in San Francisco in your kitchen and you have this vanilla bean that came all the way from Papantla. And, I just think legends and stories and all of that just make the cooking experience more magical.
This is just a really practical sort of question.
Yeah.
My book club is coming to my house tomorrow, and I didn't realize it.
Yes.
So I'm going to be home at 6, and they're all going to arrive at 7, and I've got this new cookbook.
Today?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
Yeah. So I can, soak things overnight or put things in the slow cooker or in the rice cooker or whatever. But do you have any ideas for me?
Of course I do. Of course I do so many. So there's a fabulous pasta. In Mexico, do you like pasta? Do your friends like pasta? Okay. In Mexico, we call it pasta seca when the pasta is served dry. Well, you can have a sauce, but it's not a soup. And we call it sopa aguada when it has broth. The pasta seca is think of a pasta a la pomodoro or, but with a Mexican spin. All you need are, the same ingredients, pasta, a little bit of oil, tomatoes, garlic, onion. If you can find those chipotles in adobo sauce, it would be fabulous. If not, you can use a jalapeno. And so you're going to cook that pasta the Mexican way, which is, we cook pasta many times like this. You're going to break the pasta, either the fettuccine or angel hair, spaghetti, whatever pasta you have. It doesn't even matter. Little stars, if you have little stars, alphabet, doesn't matter. You're going to cook that pasta in a saucepan with a tiny little bit of oil. But the oil has to be hot, and you're going to add the pasta, okay? You're going to fry it a little. So this is different from the Italians, what we do to pasta, and there is no way that your pasta will ever be bland because you're adding that layer of, like, when you make roux, and, it's just you're toasting the pasta, it's adding a layer of depth and flavor, and it just takes like a minute, and then you're going to add the sauce, which you can make it by pureeing tomatoes or with a can of tomatoes, just with some onion and garlic and the chipotles. You're going to add that to the pasta. So instead of boiling the pasta and then adding the sauce, think of risotto. It's sort of the same. You fry the pasta for just like a minute, and then you add the sauce, and the pasta cooks in that sauce. And so it plumps up and cooks in that sauce until it's nice and moist. It's incredibly delicious. And then you add on top avocado slices, fresh cheese. Don't find Mexican cheese, queso fresco. Use a mild feta, and it's really good. So I can give you many. There's great salads in there. I have my everyday green salad. You make the vinaigrette with just a jar. You just shake it up, and you can do it with lettuces, with asparagus, with green beans, whatever you want to use, and you really pull dinner in a snap.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you, Patti. How important is it to have good corn masa?
That's a great question. So, I was just in Texas this weekend, and I was at some markets where they have their own freshly made tortillas, where they produce their own fresh masa. So, I think these days, it's fabulous if you can find fresh corn masa, and maybe in San Francisco there is. I wouldn't tell anybody to cook, to grind the corn and cook it for 48 hours with lime and then peel it and then kneel down on the floor and make a masa. It is great if you can find somebody to do that in una tortilleria, but if you don't, you can buy the corn masa flour and just mix it with water and a little bit of salt, and it is really good quality. So you can have fresh made masa in the fast way, which honestly is what Mexican people do in their homes in Mexico when they don't have access to a tortilleria. Everybody uses those, maseca or a masa like that. You buy it and it's really delicious. So there are things in the book where I use fresh masa, like there's some chochoyotes, some dumplings that go into a very easy yellow mole. I also show people if they want to make their own corn tortillas, but it is not crucial. There's like 1,000 gazillion things that you can make without fresh masa.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm from Puebla.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God. The food in Puebla is spectacular. I was just there. I have an
Really?
episode on the foods from Puebla.
Oh, cool.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to ask you what your favorite region of Mexico is in terms of food.
That's so hard. That's like asking me which one of my kids I like the most. I love them all. Well, I love the food from Puebla. Love. And I think it is really one example of the Baroque period in Mexico where so many elements got intertwined. The native Mexican and the Spanish nuns. I mean, we owe so much to them, right? Las tortitas de Santa Clara, the mole sauces, all of that. I love the food from Puebla. I love the food from Michoacan. And I think it is a cuisine that is not so well known, and it's simpler than the food from Puebla, but it is very unique. It has a very defined personality, and it's simple and it's super homey. And every chance I get, I go to Michoacan. But then again, funny thing is, being away. So when I lived in Mexico City, we used to go to certain places for vacation in Mexico. Either Acapulco or the Valle de Bravo, or you don't move so much throughout the country. It's like here in the U.S. I don't know if how many people go across the country and try to go to every single state. But being in the US has made me really hungry to learn much more about my own country. So any chance I get with my family, any vacation, we'll go to somewhere where we haven't been. A different place in the Yucatan Peninsula. So no Yucatan, but Campeche. We just took this trip from Chihuahua to Los Mochis. Have you gone to El Cañón del Cobre? So beautiful. So beautiful. That train, El Chepe, one full wagon is a kitchen. So there, as you're rocking back and forth in those, in the rails, they're like squeezing the juice and making your coffee and making your huevos rancheros. And it's really incredible. And so we got to eat the food from the north and the chilorio and the machaca. So I didn't answer your question. I'm sorry. Mexico City. I love the food from Mexico City. That's where I grew up from. Because in Mexico City, you have the combination of the really metropolitan, up-and-coming, modern trends, new things, chefs that have fabulous restaurants that are really revolutionizing Mexican cuisine. But then you have this influx of people from all over the country that are coming because they want to find better opportunities or they want to get into the food world, and they bring into the city all these regional foods that haven't been so well known. So I think Mexico City, which is taken, I think, many times as just a stop to go into other places, shouldn't be taken for granted. The food is fabulous, and the museums too, the food.
Can you tell a little bit about your experiments with other cuisines and how you try to fuse that with Mexican?
Yes. Other cuisines or other ingredients? Other cuisines.
Cuisines, if you took a spin on it.
Oh, Italian. I love Italian food. I've been playing a lot with pasta because I have a thing with pasta. I love pasta. I've been playing just with pasta a lot, like making different kinds of lasagna. I have a friend who taught me a trick to make lasagna with chilorio. Who knows chilorio? No? Okay, chilorio is in here. You guys have to make it. Chilorio is a dish similar like the chicken tinga. You can make it, ahead of time. You can make it fast. It's pork meat, but you can use chicken that's cooked in orange juice. Can you imagine just how good that is? And after the meat is cooked, you either leave it in chunks or shred it, and then it's finished off in an ancho chile sauce. So you get sort of like a sloppy Joe feeling that has, just think about it. It's the meat cooked in citrus and then chili and tomato and a little bit of vinegar and spices. Think that layered in between pasta sheets. It's really good. But what I mostly play with really is just like Mexican ingredients and different ways to use them.
Well, if nothing else, you've got us hungry again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.